Hello, welcome to Monday Night Ignite, and we have the special speaker, Eric Walton, tonight. As president of Building Up Leaders, LLC, Eric Walton has been coaching leaders around the world for the past 8 years from diverse industries such as direct selling, multi-level marketing, high-tech, manufacturing, banking, and others. Eric is a founding partner of the John Maxwell Team and is a certified leadership coach, trainer, and speaker. He has written and developed 3 different leadership programs: Downline Leadership, Project Leadership, and Process Leadership. He has been working alongside his wife, Tammy Walton, for the past 6 years as she has achieved the diamond rank as a distributor of essential oils for young living. And I have to say, Eric, I have thoroughly enjoyed your talks on Monday Night Ignite, and we welcome you, and the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Pam. I appreciate being on here again. And I've always loved the opportunity to talk to everyone on Monday Night Ignite. It is an opportunity to just share with people the other side. So I just learned how to sleep. Now I had to learn how to deal with conflicts. And it really is great, a 1-2 punch. It's a health, and I got to run my business. So I'm really interested in helping people do that more effectively. So let me share my screen. And all righty, we're going to full presentation mode. There we go. Conflict resolution. If everybody can see that, I know it's good. So this is my 5th meeting today. The other 4 meetings were all coaching meetings, and I can assure you there was one common theme. Every single person I coached today was having a conflict of one type or another. Every single person. And this included not just people in Young Living, it included several corporate clients. This concept of conflicts is widespread. And so I love the subtitle here, if anything happened to my team, how do I deal with it? That's what we're going to do today. All right. So my favorite is what happened. The net of it is that someone said something, someone did something to someone, someone left. I know we don't, no one's had that problem at all. There's different approaches to how to do this business. There are disagreements, there's frustrations, there are discouragements, but that's what happened. Well, okay, well, that happens to everyone. How do we get to this point? Real simple answer. No one addressed it. There's no other secret to this. The only reason you have a conflict right now is that no one has addressed it. So there's no notes here. There's no secret little message down below. There's no secret tip. It really is quite simple. If you've got a conflict on your team, it's because no one has addressed it. Now, one of my favorite concepts around ownership. Whose team is this? This is not hard to figure out, by the way. It's your team. Your team. And when it's your team, that means that you have to take responsibility for addressing it. Yeah, but I'm not the one that said something. I'm not the one that left. I'm not the one that had a breakdown in integrity. All those may be true. Your team, your business, which means it's now your conflict. Well, why is that the case? It's real simple. Do you want to make a change? Do you want to make something different? You have to do something about it. So it is important to understand how you got here, like what happened, but how you got here is because you haven't addressed it yet. All right, I got that. So what do I do? And we're going to talk tonight. I mean, that was just a setup. Only took a moment. Let's try to figure out now, how do we solve this? And I've got a couple of different approaches on how to deal with conflict. All right. This is one way. I have 2 other approaches you can do this. When you're taking notes, the secret to taking notes on a presentation like this, or many others, is don't worry about trying to take down every word I say. Don't worry about trying to determine that this is some kind of gospel. Instead, listen to each of the points. Write down the ones that resonate with you. Write down the principle that makes sense. For example, the very first one, don't ignore your conflicts. They will not go away. All right, this is like, I really ought to make everyone repeat this. They will not go away, because they won't. I have tried to wish them away. I've tried praying them away. I have tried giving oils to give them away. I've tried bribing them to go away. Until you address the conflicts head on, they won't go away. They may go away in the temporary, but they'll always be in the background. So when you're taking notes again, what's the principle here? You can't ignore conflict. Well, I don't want to get into conflict. I don't like having these direct conversations. Well, there are very few people that actually do like conflict, and those people that do, you generally don't want to be around. The concept here is simply you have to get after it. All right, so can't ignore it. Real important thing. Number 2, what is the issue? Now, you're going to get these different ways to handle this. It doesn't matter whether you're a member in the conflict or you're trying to resolve conflict between 2 people, but you have to get to what's the issue. Frequently, very often, people do not know what the real issue is. It's been missed along the way. It has been misrepresented. It's been miscommunicated. I heard about this through Mary, through Jean, through Bob. I heard it from 4 different people, but you didn't hear it directly from the other person. Clarify what the issue is, and then bring them together to talk. Think about this. I know this sounds simple, but I talk with a lot of people with communication and conflict issues. They have never really gotten the 2 people that are having the conflict on the same call or in the same room. They've never got that to happen. And you're going, how is that possible? That's actually the norm. The norm is that you're not getting people to come together. So I just want to put this on the table. One of the first things you want to do is get them together and let them start talking. Now, I'm not trying. I've got lots of other tips on how do you actually do that, but these are principles I want you to just understand and address. Don't ignore it. What's the issue? Bring them together to talk. Now, what is the best way to get after this thing? Try to figure out a solution. Now, you'll notice I kind of skipped over the talk part. I'll get to that in a minute. But this is one approach. After they've talked, try to figure out what the solution would be. Sometimes it's a simple apology. Sometimes it's a simple acknowledgement that there's 2 sides to the story. Sometimes there is an understanding that there's 2 ways or more to do the business together. But what's the solution? What's the strategy to going forward? Put that in place. Now, it's really important to get both of them to own the solution. If they don't own it, it'll be just surface. It'll just be lip service. They're not really involved. They're not really engaged. What you're trying to get them to do is say, I understand what you're saying. Here's a proposed solution. I agree to do my part. So you have to own that. What's your job? Assuming you're the third party. By the way, if you're one of the 2 parties, you have to own it just like anyone else does. But if you're the third party, we get to the next part, which is you have to monitor and you have to follow up on what occurs. Why? Because people, even when they own it, maybe their ownership is temporary, right? Maybe it's temporary. Maybe it's not as committed as you would like. Maybe one's more committed than the other. So you have to monitor and follow up on the conflict. More importantly, monitor and follow up on the resolution. This is one approach. If you can just identify, don't ignore it, bring it up, the sooner the better, by the way. The sooner that you can address a conflict, the better off you are. Now, I know that there are some dynamics. I know one of the things that we're going to get to Q&A is going to be, when someone has left for another MLM and has left disruption in their wake, and there's still some people on the team that are having conflict, people that are still associated with the one that left, people that are really upset that the other person left, and there's conflict between the 2 groups. You have to address this right away. I know that that's very difficult. My gosh, if I just let it settle down a little bit. What do you think is going to happen if you just let it settle down a little bit? It won't. More people will leave, more people will get upset, more people have frustration, discouragement, fights, battles. social media back and forth. Hard to believe, I know, right? But you see it every day, right? So continue to monitor and follow up on the conflict. This is one way. Well, let's do a little bit of reflection here, all right? When you're responding to a conflict, I love this little table. What's an unhealthy response? I love that. Explosive, angry, hurtful, resentful, or the one that's not there is, or none. Not responding to a conflict at all is unhealthy. What do you want to do? I want to be calm. Oh my gosh, here's the hard one now. Non-defensive and a respectful reaction. I have a phrase that many of you heard, write once, edit twice. When I'm in conflict resolution mode, I write once, edit 3 times. I literally have someone, if I'm really worried, I have someone else read it. If it's not my wife, I have someone else read my response to a conflict before I send it. But I'm human too, and so I'll write something that is not going to be as productive and effective as I would like to be. So I'm not doing a good response. I have another rule, by the way. I never respond to conflict past 10 o'clock at night. I'm a late nighter, but that doesn't mean I should be sending responses to conflicts late at night. You know, remember the old days when you were out and your parents said nothing happens good after midnight? Nothing happens good on any single email, Slack, text, PM, or DM that you would send after 10 o'clock at night. Nothing. Everyone that now think that they think they got that, you're wrong. Because you're just going to end up saying something, or you'll say the right thing, but slightly the wrong way, or you'll say it mostly the right way, but you use the wrong word. Be thoughtful, be respectful, make a good response later on. Another unhealthy, the withdrawal of love resulting in rejection, isolation, shaming, and fear of abandonment. Wow. We already are in this situation where so many people on our teams right now are feeling alone. So what's the best response? Yeah, make them feel even more alone. Pull back even any conversation that we would have. Every team in Young Living has some form of conflict going on right now. Oh no, my wife and I, we're great leaders. We don't have any conflict. Untrue. Oh, but at least your tops of legs. Conflict with tops of legs. Been there, done that. Have to address them. You have to do this with an element of love, an element of care and respect. Okay, the forgive and forget part. If I'm gonna really draw them in, well, wait a second, they really hurt me. No, actually, they really hurt me. I've had some people say some very nasty things about me. Wait a second, how's that? I'm the nicest person I know. It doesn't matter. They will say something that will hurt you. And I really like what Stacey wrote, where's your heart? Being able to be heartfelt, forgive. The one I even struggle with more is the forget part. Apologizing where necessary, even when it may not have been your fault, but making sure that you're willing to meet people halfway through. What's another unhealthy? An inability to compromise or see the other person's side. If as we get prepared, we just went through the midterm elections. You all know what's going to happen in the next 2 years. The political pressure is going to get more intense. I'm just talking about politics. I'm not even talking about doing life or doing business, just politics. You already know what's going to happen. The polarization are going to force two people further and further away on any possible topic. And no, Karen, it will definitely get worse. I'm telling you now, it's going to get worse. If that's just the political world, what do you think is happening to people where they're investing their hours and time, their health and wellness of their families in Young Living, and they know they're right? And that can't be the only way to see things. You have to be able to get to a situation where you are going to understand what compromise looks like, and you have to get a situation to where you can see the other person's side. Have to. I think there's a good phrase on the healthy side: avoid punishing. Two things, and it doesn't say this here, but avoid punishing the other person. Also avoid punishing yourself. You also have to forgive yourself in the situation. Why is that? I know it's going to be even harder to believe, but there are occasions where I said something that hurt someone else. I said something that hurt someone else. I can't recall doing that on purpose, but I know I've done it. I've hurt someone else. Maybe it was because I didn't have the best words. Maybe because I was acting so, oh, Eric, you need to send that note. So I went and sent the note, and it wasn't heartfelt when I sent it. So it didn't come across in the way that I hoped. I had a situation a couple of years ago where I had someone that I was working with, and they had done something really, it was not intentional. They had done something that really hurt me. They had betrayed our trust in them. And we had a really good direct conversation, which we'll talk about in just a couple of slides. And things looked like they had been done well. In other words, we identified the issue. She owned what she had done. We had hugs. We forgave each other. We looked like we moved forward, but it festered with her. And one of the things that festered with her is that she had said something, and again, she was really upset with herself. She had done something, even though it was on accident. She was upset with herself that she let herself get in that situation, that she said something that she shouldn't have said. And she was so upset with herself that she couldn't forgive herself, which eventually meant she couldn't forgive me. Even though I was a so-called hurt person, she ended up not being able to forgive me either. So this might have been 6 months after the event. She said something to me that, of course, I knew I was right, and I said something back I should not have said. Now I've hurt her. Great. Good job, Eric. Really trying to find that level of maturity, that level of peace. Stop trying to punish the other person and stop trying to punish yourself. Trying to find that place of balance and harmony makes such a big difference. Now, here's the last one I think that is so important. Unhealthy response: feeling fearful or avoiding conflict because you're always expecting a bad outcome. I will tell you that most direct conversations where you are facing conflict head on is in fact going to be the best solution. Well over 80% of conflicts that I'm aware of, and I've had many over my 40 years in business, have been addressed effectively and well. And in fact, it ends up being a strengthening exercise. In other words, where the person on the two people involved become closer because they had the conflict than not. You have to believe that. You have to really believe that. For those that watched Yellowstone last night, I won't give anything away, but two of the characters literally got out in the yard and were just fighting. One of the male, by the way, there were two women, they were just fighting, punching. So one of the husbands came out and says, all right, now you're just going to stand there and you're just going to go one punch back and forth. Classic cowboy event. So literally one would just take the biggest punch she could and hit the other one. She would get back and hit the biggest punch until they were willing to stop. And they got to the point where the two of them were just willing to finally stop. I'm not recommending this as a tactic, that we should have drag out fights. Don't laugh on me now, Pam. I'm not suggesting we do that, but I want you to hear the concept. They had been fighting with each other really poorly for several months. Really poorly. And so it's nighttime in the yard. They just had a full out brawl. But what they did was they faced the conflict head on. Now, this wasn't even, there was talking in the middle of it. So they did get their points across, but they were just going to do this. Are you going to have a healthy response to the conflict, or are you not? All right, let's go to another way to deal with conflict resolution. All right, and then I'll have a third way. Remember now, you're just listening to these points and you're trying to draw the little nuggets out that you want. And yes, Pam, it was Beth, the environmentalist girl. I can't believe, if you hadn't seen it, that was a really good guess. Okay, first one, set a discussion time. No, we're going to be intentional. We're going to be proactive. When you learn of the conflict, you're going to get this on the table as soon as possible. Mary and Beth, can we meet next week, Tuesday, anytime? What's available? Great. 4 o'clock at night, Central Time. We'll go with that. Set a time. If you're the third party, super. In many cases, it helps to have a third party. It does. By the way, the third party has to really understand their role. I'm just letting you know this, especially if you are the one that's the third party. You have to be neutral. Even when you think you have a side, you have to be neutral. If the two sides at any one point think that you're favoring the other side, you will have failed in your role. Everybody hear that? Third party must be neutral. Even if you aren't, you must present as neutral. Now, there's a reason why, by the way. It's not because there isn't one who might have been more aggrieved or one that might have been more at fault, but the biggest dynamic that comes out is the ability for both people to share their story. If you don't let them share their story, someone's going to never get over their hurt. And I just want you to understand, very often, both sides do not fully understand the other person's story. They haven't heard it. They don't know all the things that went there. They don't know why someone really left. Why would you leave? Why would a diamond leave? Why did that happen? They don't know the full story. By the way, that doesn't mean you have to support their decision. It just means you have to hear their story. You have to hear it. There's a really, really good quote at the end of my presentation. Maybe I'll share it now. Conflict resolution is not about who has the biggest hammer. It's about who has the biggest ears. Conflict resolution is not about the biggest hammer. It's about the biggest ears, like in these two things inside your head. The better that you can let both sides talk and both sides listen is going to change the game. Now, similar here, I love some of the phrasing, figure out the main issue. What was the issue? What was the name? What was the hurt? What was the offense? What was the specific thing said? Oh, let's get to the word specific. You have to be specific. When you are preparing for this kind of conversation, make sure that both sides have the specific information. She hurt me. When? How? What was said? Who was there? You have to have that information. Otherwise, you're dealing in generalities. You're dealing in vague and difficult thought processes that you can't possibly you can't internalize them. They have to be specific. So whenever you're in this situation, I'm not trying to see who has more ammunition. You just have to be specific. Instead of trying to find a solution, another way to frame it, establish common goals. What if they're on the same team? Which, by the way, in Young Living, many of the conflicts, there are people on the same team. Those are the ones that are deepest, the ones that hurt the most. People that that you're working with, doing business with, doing life with, and don't have your back. So what if they're on the same team? What are the common goals when you're the same team? You all know how this works. We are interconnected at Young Living. When Kathy does well, Pam does well. Deb does well. Jen does well. We're interconnected. When someone shares a story in Nashville, someone in Knoxville all of a sudden decides to become a brand partner. And it wasn't because you planted that seed or you watered it. You're the beneficiary of someone else sharing the Young Living story with them, and they decide that you were there, they decided to sign up with you. Frequently, that's because of someone else's work. Establish common goals. Now, common goals, common solution, then you got to figure out how you're going to get there. You have to come to a conclusion, how are we going to resolve the gap? And then determine what those roles would look like. Very powerful, right? All right, let's go to what I call the simple approach. All right, let's get to it. Call everybody to a meeting. Let everyone talk without interruption. I don't like that idea. Yeah. You need to let each person talk without interruption. By the way, that means no clarifications. That means that we're not trying to go back and forth. We're just trying to let one person talk. Are you finished? Yes. Mary, you go next. Let them talk. I'm not exaggerating, and it's a ridiculously high percentage. If they just hear each other, what went wrong? What was their heart? What was their thoughts? If they just get a chance to hear each other, that resolves many of the conflicts. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. That statement is more true the sooner that you address the conflict than later. The longer you wait to resolve a conflict, the more hurt, the more emotions, the more dynamics are involved in resolving it. It gets harder and harder to fix a conflict the longer you wait, to the point where, let's be truthful, there are some conflicts that you can't come back from. It's been too long. There's been too much hurt. And you're going to end up having to deal with, sometimes you're going to have to let it go. And who wants to let go? I thought we're trying to figure this out. But if you just get the two people together in the same room to talk through what was said. Now, let's get to the nitty gritty. I can't get them in the same room. Real world, I can't get them in the same room. I can't get them on the same call. I can't even, I am the third person. I can't get them to even listen to the other person. Then I start first with 2 one-on-ones. But I don't just give up. I start with two one-on-ones. And so I'm talking to Mary. And for those that know me, I use Mary as my common name. So all the Marys on the call, please forgive me. But I start with a one-on-one. And I go, Mary, what happened? What's the issue? Why can't you talk with Jean? And I'll listen to her. And again, remember now that it's not unusual that there's an emotional hurt. I've actually done with some teams where the hurt goes back to high school. I know you know I'm not making this stuff up. It's been a hurt for years. I know I've been on teams where it's a family member. Some of those are the hardest ones. And I've had to deal with sisters and brothers that aren't getting along. I'm just saying this. Deal with a one-on-one and try to get to this point. Mary, what will it take for you to meet with Jean? What will it take for you to hear what they have to say? I've listened to them for years. I don't care. I don't want to hear them ever again. Okay, Mary, what would you like to do with this conflict? We're only talking right now because you don't want to go on. You don't want to keep on having this drama. But meeting with them is not on your radar. What would you like to do? I will tell you that most of the time they do not have an answer to that question. The reason is, the primary answer is to meet with them, whether virtually or in person. That's the primary answer. By the way, this goes back to biblical. It gets all the way to when someone is with another one is having that face-to-face dialogue. Here's how you hurt me. Here's how I'm feeling. Here's what I meant to say. I didn't mean to hurt you. If you don't have that discussion, how are you ever going to get there? I'm being honest now. How are you going to get there unless you have that dialogue? So you got to get them in the same group, work on a solution to get past both parties, right? Okay. Couple of final tips. It's very important to listen to what is felt, what your heart is trying to say, what you hear, as well as what's being said. The EQ side, if you're all familiar with EQ, emotional quotient, which is the other side of IQ. So often we want to have these discussions with IQ only. We want to have an intellectual discussion where here are the 3 things you did wrong, which I can document by the 3 posts on social media that you put in. You should be ashamed. You should fess up. You should apologize. If you do, and also send me $100, we're good to go. That rarely is ever going to work with anyone, because so much bad blood has gone under the bridge at this point. You have to listen to where their heart is. Why were they hurt? Why did they say that in the first place? I know you know the phrase "hurt people hurt people." But you don't understand what that really means until someone who's hurts you. You don't really understand what that intimate means inside until someone who's been hurt says something that really hurts you, that's unfair. Should not have been said, but it was. Make conflict resolution the priority rather than winning or being right. Oh my. Oh my. Every one of us has a friend where being right is the critical factor for every discussion. And that is so not effective. But that's where they're at. They have to be right. They'd rather be dead than wrong. Everyone that's smiling when I said that, they can think of 3 people right now. They'd rather be dead than be wrong. I have one person in mind so right now. Just beyond their comprehension. I won't go into the politics, but all sorts of stuff going on right now. Imagine as stuff gets more revealed over time, Twitter reveals more stuff. Oh my gosh, it's just, they'd rather be dead than wrong. So we're trying to do business together. We're trying to make a difference in people's lives. We want to resolve the conflict more than we want to be the winner or being right. Focus on the present. Man, oh man, oh man. If you continue to lapse into the past, you're going to live there. The past is for a recollection. You're familiar with the whole concept around gaslighting going on right now, where people are trying to restate, reposition the past, which is what gaslighting is. It means that I don't really care how you remember it. I remember it more accurately than you. Here's what really happened. That's not what we're trying to do in this at all. We're trying to address where people were hurt. We're trying to address where people were in pain. We're trying to focus on the present. When you're in this discussion, I said I talk about talking. Now remember, the one of the other rules is I love to really get 2 people there. I love to go, Mary, tell us your story. Bring all the facts, all the details, all the messages, all whatever you got. Bring everything you got. Talk for as long as you want, and we're not going to interrupt you. Gene, just listen. Y'all hear where I'm going now? This is actually how you do it. Mary, talk. Now, do you care if she talks for 5 minutes or 50 minutes? No. Think about this. You mean if I just let Mary talk for 50 minutes, I might solve this conflict that's been going on for 3 years. And you're going to give up at 15 minutes? Y'all know what I just said. I can't listen to her for that long. Just once, listen to her for 50 minutes. Mary, you done? Yes. Gene, your turn. Wait a second, this could be like a 3-hour call. 3 hours for 3 years. I think I can do that. I don't want to do 3-hour calls. I want to resolve the conflict. So when people are talking, they're bringing up the past, which is fine. This is the moment to do that. But once you've done that, okay, both sides have now talked. Now I'm going to focus on the present. We're going to address what level of apology needs to be out there. Almost always helps when both apologize, because at this point, by the way, for everyone on the call that's married, you know that rarely is it 100-0. Maybe 99-1, being the male of the species. I know what my 1 is, but there's always some element where the other person shares some portion of the blame. So just get on the table that the reason we're here is we want to resolve this conflict. And mutual apology is so much more effective than someone saying, I'm sorry, you're right. We don't need to say that. I'm sorry that I hurt you. And the other person saying, thank you. I'm sorry that I said some of the things I said after that. And just get there. Be willing to forgive. We just talked about having apology, but when someone says they're sorry, you have to be willing to forgive. And it has to be genuine, by the way. Not, I accept your apology. It has to be genuine. Now, this thing about picking your battles, It is very difficult to pretend you're going to resolve every conflict on your team. I wish that were true, but it's pretty hard to do that. So you're going to have to pick the ones you're going to go after. Sometimes those are the biggest ones. Sometimes they're the most impactful ones. Sometimes they're the ones that affect you the most or affect your team the most. The concept is choose the ones you can get after, the ones you can fix, and go after them. And then know when another conflict you can't go fix, both parties are interested. So let's go to the mitigation side. What happens when one of the people don't want to get together, and no matter what you do, they won't? Or what happens when, I can't solve this one. I either can't get them to the table or I just don't have the energy for that. I will draw up a mitigation plan. Now, that means that the conflict's not going away. I'm just going to do my best to mitigate it. I'm going to do my best to handle it. I'm going to do my best to let it go. I'm going to do my best for people to let it settle there. And I know that there's going to be a festering, but hopefully there's enough Band-Aids put on that it doesn't become an open wound. But I got to make choices because I can't solve everything. And there's that quote, not having the biggest hammer, the biggest ears. That's what it means to go after really solving conflict resolutions.